Well, what they've done with the scientific proof about this particle is they buried it because it threatened, it disproved quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics it's like built on sand.
Welcome, beautiful souls, to another fabulous episode of Self-Love Talks. And today I have an extremely amazing treat for you all, because I've invited this incredible gentleman here, Mr. David Ash, who has led a life rich in both quantum physics and spirituality, and has found the beautiful bridge between the two, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And I know he's got so much kind of mind-blowing information to share with you, particularly in proving the existence of God through science. Welcome, David Ash. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Tara. It's a joy to be here with you today.
So tell me, to begin with, let everybody know, where in the world are you, by the way, David?
I'm in Devon, near Exeter.
So that's down in the southwest.
Southwest, yeah.
Lovely. It's very beautiful down there. And so how did all of this start with you? Because I know, I'm lucky enough to know you personally. You've blessed my life in many, many ways. You have so many teachings and gifts to share with people, and it is going to be pretty mind-blowing. But how did you get started?
Well, my father was a doctor, a medical doctor, and he was working on the link between radioactivity and cancer, especially in the West Country where you have uranium under the ground. And the thing is that he had a practice, and as a 4-year-old, I walked into the waiting room and my parents were there speaking to a patient. And the patient turned down to me, she was a lady, and she said, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" That's what you ask little kids, don't you? And I just turned up to her and I said, "I'm going to prove the existence of God through science."
I mean, where did that come from? That's not the normal thing that comes out of a 4-year-old's mouth.
It certainly is not, but definitely out of the mouths of babes. I mean, my parents were pretty gobsmacked, and my mother told me that, before she died. So I wasn't told that until I was an adult, that what I'd said. But anyway, what happened is my father used to take us, I had brothers and sisters, we used to go out onto the moors, Bodmin Moor, prospecting for uranium, you see, for my father's research. I mean, we collected enough uranium ore to make our own bomb almost.
Is that safe for children?
We had dustbin loads of it outside the back door. And anyway, so my father introduced me to radioactivity physics, the work of Rutherford and other great scientists, when I was 6 or 7. So he mentored me in physics. And so what happened is, by the time I was 16, at the age of 16, I was reading a book on yogic philosophy. And in that book, it said that the yogis, use their siddhi powers to look into the atom, and they saw that the smallest particles of in the atom were vortices of prana. And I looked at this book, and the book was printed 2 or 3 months. It was published 2 or 3 months in 1905 before Einstein published his equation E=mc². And I thought, these guys have anticipated Einstein, so maybe the yogis had the right understanding of the way that energy forms mass, you see.
Right. Can I just pause you there? So in this book, do you remember the name of the book?
Yes, it's an advanced course in yogic philosophy and Oriental occultism. It's by Yogi Ramachakara, and it's available online. You can actually get this book online. It's been reprinted and reprinted, and so you can buy it on the internet.
And so
advanced course in yogic philosophy.
Right. So these yogic Vedas.
Well, the yogis, yes, they actually the thing about probing the atom, with their siddhi powers, I got that from another source. Well, in this book, it just says that the yogis taught that atoms were vortices of energy. The smallest particles of matter were vortices of energy.
Can I just ask, what's a siddhi power?
A siddhi power is the supernormal powers that these yogis had.
So that they can see energy.
They call the anima siddhi. They could look into the very small, and they could actually take their consciousness right down to the smallest levels and peer into the quantum levels.
That I find absolutely fascinating, because that's really on a level with what I do. and looking at people's energy. So that's kind of fascinating. Okay, so you read this book when you were 16. You'd already declared when you were 4 that you were going to prove the existence of God through science. And then you got into spirituality. How did you come across that book, by the way? How did you get into spirituality?
Well, what happened, it's a bit of a story. I was on the beach sunbathing at Bexhill-on-Sea, and the girl was looking at me, and I thought, oh, she fancies me. So I went over and started to chat her up, and she looked at me and she said, "You remind me of an Oxfam advert, you see?"
An Oxfam advert, that's not very
Yeah, I was so skinny. So that's what she'd been looking at me, because I looked like a skeleton on the beach, you see. So my ego just went deflated.
Yeah,
so I wanted to do something to put on some muscle, like a Charles Atlas course or something. And I was out jogging with friends of mine at school. And one of them said, "Why don't you do yoga and try yoga? You might put on a bit of muscle." And we didn't have a clue, we're only kids, you know. And the other friend, he said, "Oh, well, my dad's got an antiquarian library. And I think there are some books on yoga there. Why don't we go and check it out?" So I went back to his place, and his father had this library of ancient books in the attic. And one of them was this copy of the sort of, first edition copy of this book by, on yogic philosophy. And it was actually, published on the 1st of January, 1905. And that was the year Einstein published his amazing theories.
So that's 2 sets of kind of synchronicities right there.
Absolutely.
Like the synchronicities of Einstein and the publication of this, this Vedic work, and then your life within a short space of time with the physics and the science and the spirituality. There seems to be some kind of connection there. So what happened?
What happened then is I realized that in 19th century in Britain, the physicists were teaching that the atom was a vortex, you see. So this vortex idea was in physics, and they were teaching, this was Lord Kelvin, this was James Clerk Maxwell, J.J. Thomson, who discovered the electron. This vortex theory was taught at Cambridge until 1910. And what they said is there are 2 forms of energy. There are 2 forms. There's the waveform that's the basis of light, and the vortex that's the basis of matter. But they applied the vortex idea to the atom. And then when things were discovered, it was spectral lines, for anyone who understands a bit of physics. The vortex theory couldn't explain these spectral lines, and so it was abandoned. And a Danish physicist called Niels Bohr explained spectral lines by applying Einstein's quantum theory to the atom. And he got a Nobel Prize, and he set up the Institute of Theoretical Physics at Copenhagen, and his star pupil was Werner Heisenberg, and together they set up quantum mechanics, you see. And the thing is, what I've realized is that this Heisenberg uncertainty principle that Heisenberg used is wrong. It's the evidence about the particle called the neutron that scientists use to detonate weapons of mass destruction disproves the uncertainty principle. And, people go on and say, "Where's the scientific proof? Where's the scientific proof? Where's the scientific proof?" Well, what they've done with the scientific proof about this particle is they buried it because it threatened, it disproved quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics it's like built on sand. It's not true. It's been disproved, but the scientists have actually, the physicists have buried the evidence, Tara.
So that's a lot that you're saying right there. So let's just wind this back a little bit, because can you just tell people why should people listen to you? Like, I know personally, you've written like 10 books.
The reason is because what I did that's so special is I applied this vortex theory to the subatomic particles. You see, they applied the vortex to the wrong level. If you apply the vortex to the proton and the electron, the particles that make up the atom, it works. And I've found I can explain the whole of physics. This is the unified field. What I can do with this vortex theory is I can show that the spin of the vortex sets up the inertia, the resistance of movement in matter, okay?
Right, we're going to need to just take a breath and rewind that back, because I'm guessing that most of my listeners are going to be kind of going, what?
Yes, okay. So what I did is this. I applied the vortex idea to the subatomic particle. And the idea is took the yogic idea that it's prana, it's energy that is actually spinning to form the vortex. So it's like a string theory.
So a vortex is what? Vortex
the
is
vortex is a whirlpool. It's a whirlpool of energy. Instead of the energy moving in waves that forms light, like sperm, that's the masculine form of energy.
Right.
The vortex is spinning, and because it's free to spin on lots of different axes, it forms a ball, like a ball of wool. So this is the spherical vortex. It's just like the ovum. This is the feminine form of energy. Mater, mother. Mater is matter, is the Latin for mother, you see.
So what you're saying is matter made up of vortexes? Is the smallest part of matter a vortex?
Yeah, that's
and
it.
The vortex spins and spins and spins. But how does it end up looking like a ball of wool? You've lost me there.
Well, because the energy spins, you see. It's not like a conical vortex, like what, in the bath that goes down the plug hole. If you wind string freely, you end up with a ball. So it can't do anything else except form the sphere.
So the spinning vortex isn't a cone vortex, because I've seen a lot of that in people's energy fields. And of course, that is like a portal for energy to move through. But what you're saying is matter itself is a spinning vortex. It's not a cone. So what is it, like a tiny little spiral?
It's like a ball of wool. You see, this is a vortex. When a woman winds wool into a ball, it's dynamic. When she does her knitting, it's dynamic. But everyone thinks of the conical vortex. Nobody thinks of the ball of wool. It is a vortex. Right. It's a three-dimensional spiral. Do you see, even the ball of wool is feminine, isn't it? It's almost like the symbol of motherhood is the knitting ball of wool.
And it is the ovum. It is. It's like that's what they look like. So you've got the ovum of the earth, the mother, the matter, and then the sperm or the wave of the light particle.
That's the masculine form of energy.
So this naturally occurs everywhere. We have these vortices of matter, we have these waves of light, and then they meet each other.
They meet each other. Basically, just like the sperm fertilizes the ovum, the quantum or photon drives into the vortex and pushes it along into wave motion like a tadpole. That is the wave particle. It's not that matter and light are the same because electrons behave like waves. It's because the interaction between these two forms, the sexual interaction, if you like, drives them forward. You see,
and then
like
what happens?
wave motion creates all biological life. You see, chemistry.
Yeah, because you need the masculine element and the feminine element. You need matter and light to create.
Oh yeah. I mean, you get this whole area of subatomic sex, because what happens is that the first wave that drives into the electron is like the husband, and that's a very strong bond. But she's still attractive, and so another wave drives in like a lover, and she becomes excited and takes a quantum leap into the excited state, and that's when chemistry happens. She goes off into another home. She goes off with her lover into another house, which is another atom, and that sets up bonding. And when she drops back down again, that's the flame, the old flame, you see, because the energy, this is she goes from the excited state in the atom back to the ground state with marriage, and the disillusioned lover leaves as a photon of light, and that's what we see as the flame.
Whoa, that's just taken us to a whole another path.
So we explain quantum physics, quantum theory with sex. It makes it so interesting. I mean, this is the way to teach it, get people interested.
No, I absolutely understand. I get it. And so, I'm kind of wondering if there's a message in there for the ladies or for the feminines in us of like,
it justifies ladies going off with men, I tell you. And if you they can say, I'm just taking a quantum leap, folks,
I need a quantum leap. I need some lovers and some.
That's right. That's it. That's the way, you see.
I need to ascend. Let me go and get some high vibe lover light. Okay.
So now, but the thing is, what I want to do is explain the universal law of love.
Yes, please. Oh, okay. Let's please.
What it is that this is the vortex of the unified field. The vortex that I'm holding is the center. The subatomic particle is just the center of this vortex system. But the vortex never ends. It just extends out and out and out. So the extension of the vortex into infinity is space. It's also the electric field. It's also the magnetic field. But these vortices, they're all overlapping each other and interacting. And when you look at the flower of life symbol, that's so important because it's showing the interlacing circles of this vortex energy extending out, all overlapping and interacting. So the thing is that space is vortex energy, that's sparse, and matter is vortex energy that's dense. That's why Einstein said we've got to get away from talking about, matter. We just talk about in space, talk about the one field where there's an area where it's really tight and strong and another area where it's sparse and loose. So the thing is that when you move a particle of matter, you move its space with you, its space goes with you. So we're all carrying around a bubble of space. So if I really come up to you, Tara, you feel uncomfortable because I'm invading your space, literally. So the thing is that because you carry a bubble of space with you wherever you go, you can actually do this. If you swing a pendulum around the edge of a table, the pendulum will follow the line of the table. But when you get to the corner, the pendulum will actually track out the corner. It'll turn around and it wants to go along the other edge. The pendulum will track out these lines of space, the extension of this vortex energy creating space, because the space around the table is the space of the table. And when people go dowsing, you see, you've got the rock with all this space that's standing still, but you've got an underground stream which has got its space field that's moving. So you've got your rods, and your rods go like that when they meet the moving space. We go with the pendulum will change direction.
Is that because moving space is magnetic?
Yeah. It's magnetism, electricity are effects of the space that get cancelled out when they're equals and opposites. But it's magnetism. Einstein got this idea of space being a real thing when he was 5, and his dad gave him a compass when he was ill in bed, and he just sat there all day staring at this compass with the needle staying still as he moved the compass around. So he thought there's something, the space is holding the needle. He didn't know anything about magnetism. He thought, well, space must be real because it's holding the needle. And all these things of relativity come from that. When he was asked in New York in 1919 to put his theory of relativity in a single sentence, he said, move matter and you move space-time. You see? So this explains it. We can understand Einstein with the vortex.
Wow, there's a lot of messages in there for people right now. So
yeah.
So that's why people say take action if you want change to happen. It's like literally making some kind of movement.
That's right.
It brings space, and because space really is potential, isn't it?
It is potential, absolutely. Energy, this energy is movement. Everything is either waves or vortices, but for movement, you must have space. But where do you get the space from? You see, the thing is that the space is created by the vortex. And what happens is one vortex is the space relative to which the other vortex is the movement, and vice versa. So when you get two vortices, one is the space for the other to move in. And it's the same with light.
And it's all created by the vortex. By the
vortex. So the vortex is creating the space
for itself,
in which everything can move. So this is the universal law of love, of being there for everyone else. Now notice, for all the ladies listening to this talk, the space is created by the mother. Now these waveforms of energy like sperm, they need space to move in too as well, but they don't make space. They can only exist, light can only exist thanks to the matter.
Space.
Yeah, the space. We depend on the vortex, mate of the mother, to make the space for everybody. So the mother is making the space for everyone. Mother is enabling everything to exist. Without the mother, nothing can exist.
So the mother is the matter that creates matter, but also creates the space that enables light to exist, because you need a space for light to exist and then move.
Yeah, yes, light can't exist because it's pure movement. It can't exist without space to move in. Energy is movement. It's a measure of activity.
So bring this back to love. So what's this got to do with love, David?
Well, love is the interrelationship. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Love is the interdependence. It's everyone being there for everybody else. Each vortex is there for every other vortex. Each vortex is there for the quanta. So it's like the love is her saying, Come on, light, you can exist. I'm making this space for you to be in.
So
and then all us human beings.
Some people might not look at that as love. They might just be like, well, that's just a law of physics. That's just a law of creation. There's no emotion. There's no intimacy. There's nothing divine about that whatsoever. It's just
okay. Jesus Christ said, sorry to interrupt you. Jesus Christ said the whole law is embodied in these two statements. That is, love God with all your heart and all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself.
As yourself.
Love is being there for others. It's not romantic stuff. It's being there for others. It's putting yourself out for others. And if you like, each vortex puts itself out. It's there for the other vortex. It's saying to the other vortex, you can move, you can exist. I'm there for you. And the other vortex is saying, oh, you can move, you can be in existence as a form of movement because I'm there for you. So this is relativity.
But I suppose that original, which came first, the matter or the space, and the fact that the feminine is that space and is that matter. And then I suppose that because everything comes from that matter, that everything that she is enabling to exist and therefore loving, because she's enabled it to exist for there to be an other, that other is also a part of her. So in loving the other, in loving thy neighbor, or the other, as in the dynamic of the masculine, she's also loving herself because it's all come from her in the first place, and we're back at that unified field.
That's right. That's absolutely right. All are born of woman, do nothing to harm the children. These are the sacred laws of the native people, the Native Americans. So the ultimate, it's the Shakti principle, and Parashakti, isn't it? It's the source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva all come from the mother. The mother is the source of the universe. I mean, I'm sorry, gentlemen, but it has to be a lady. It just has to be the feminine principle. Everything depends upon this whirlpool of energy setting up not just matter but space.
Incredible. What do you think the point is of matter existing in the first place, and for this space to be created so that we can exist and everything can exist? What do you think is the ultimate point of that?
Well, the ultimate point is the source of everything. If energy is more like a thought than a thing, then energy is the impulse. Energy comes out of an intent of pure consciousness. We can't understand it, but there's a source which is imagining everything into existence. So every particle of energy is held by intent, by imagination. It's an act of imagination.
So who did the original imagining then for even the matter?
Well, it's almost like a state. The thing is that the way it works is that you can't have a thought without a thinker. But if the thinker doesn't have any substance, if the thinker is the state of thinking, then that state of thinking cannot exist without the thought. So you can't have this idea of God in the universe. You can't have the universe without God, but you can't have God without the universe. So they're in total coexistence. So in a sense, this is another level of love, that love is relationship. How can you have love if you've got nobody to love? And so if the source is one, it has to come out with the creation. The one has to become the many, so you can have relationships. This whole thing of, what I was saying about the vortices being there for each other, that's a relationship. The vortex being there for the light, that's a relationship. And the thing is, what we learn in physics, Tara, is that if a proton is a form of imagination, if it's an act of consciousness, because protons are all exactly the same, they have exactly the same physical characteristics, this suggests that they come from the same source, the same one consciousness. So quantum means many, but the source is one. So the thing is that it's one consciousness gives rise to everything. So this fundamental principle of the indivisibility or the oneness of consciousness is really important, because we understand then that if there's only one consciousness in all of us, so I am you and you are me, but you, Tara, in a female body, I'm in a male body. But when I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, it's the same awareness, conscious awareness, looking out of your eyes as is looking out of mine. So humanity is one being in many bodies. When we hurt one another, we hurt ourselves. When we love one another, we love ourselves.
Absolutely. So in loving you, I love myself.
Yes.
It's actually true, because in loving you, I feel the love inside me. Whether you receive my love or not, I feel it, and I feel that love in my heart, and it makes my heart feel amazing. And it's like, and it reminds me of where the source of love actually is, which is inside of me. And when I talk about having self-love relationship, it's not like a one-dimensional thing, because like you said, love exists because of a relationship. And so I am having a sense of self-love because I'm having a relationship with that consciousness, that oneness that is absolute pure consciousness. And to me, that consciousness is the energy, is the flavor, it's a sensation, it's everything that I can put my senses on, tell me that it is a love consciousness, it's a loving consciousness, and the ultimate loving consciousness. And so when I have a relationship with that consciousness between my matter, my thought, my ability to have my light particles moving and connecting with my matter particles and creating that electricity and creating that thought, then I'm able to have this relationship with that source creation that's inside me, that is me, but there's still a me to have a relationship with it. So my first relationship is inside of me, that teaches me about love, that informs me that I'm loved and I am, and I'm part of this incredible universe. And then it's like, from that perspective, I see everybody through that lens, through those eyes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense, absolute sense. And so what it is our consciousness, the consciousness is in us. That is the divine or the God part of us. The word human is the word hu is an ancient Egyptian word for God or the divine.
Really?
And so the ability to love, the ability to think, the ability to reason, these are all attributes of the one, of the divine consciousness. So we embody that. So this consciousness comes into the universe, it sets up the universe and then enters the universe and is in every electron, every proton. I mean, we've got a cat called Archie. I mean, he is so intelligent, he's so consciousness, he's such a lovely being, and he's just another aspect. Susie and I and Archie, we're all three bodies with the one being. So he's as much an embodiment of consciousness. I mean, cats, in ancient times were worshipped as gods, and they haven't forgotten that.
No, they haven't. You're right. They totally expect and demand to be treated like they are supreme beings. So let me get back. So you were saying something explosive early on in this, and I just want to kind of frame this for you, because you're not just an enthusiast, you are a quantum theorist. You've been working on this for 50 years now, and you have 10 books.
65 years.
55 years.
About 60 years, really. 60 years, yes.
60 years. Well, I guess it started when you were 6, your lessons in physics when you were 6.
But I really got into it. I discovered the vortex when I was 16. I'm now 75, so it's just a year short.
Really? Wow. That's incredible. So you discovered this at 16, so that's a long time you've been doing.
It's a long time, yeah.
That's a long time. And I can see, obviously, it's very clear that you're very passionate, that you've been sort of studying this, physics and quantum physics and as well as spirituality in your life. And so you also have published books. I know that you've published, is it 10 books that you have?
Yeah, I've got this as my latest one is SUPERENERGY in the Quantum Vortex. But
that's beautiful.
What I'm doing is I'm writing a set of 6 essays for the Philosophy Society of Exeter University, and we're just working on that at the moment. And as I produce the PDF files to send into the society, they're going to put it up on their forum, but I'll put it up on Facebook, and so that people can come into a group and they can actually read my argument for why quantum mechanics is false, why it's basically It's equivalent of a con, the fact that they've been burying evidence, you see. So everyone's being, beefed up that quantum mechanics is the best thing. No, quantum theory is different. Quantum theory is what Einstein gave us, but quantum mechanics is what Heisenberg gave us, and it's basically been disproved. But they won't admit.
So tell us, what's the difference then? What's the difference between quantum physics and quantum mechanics?
Quantum mechanics is a very subtle little shift that Heisenberg made. He invented quantum mechanics, but it's something he and Bohr and a few other harebrained young people set up because he needed a good idea. And the good idea got disproved in 1932 when James Chadwick of the Cavendish in Britain, he actually discovered the neutron. And the neutron shows that the uncertainty principle is untrue.
Right. So I think my listeners here, if they're following you along, probably don't know what the uncertainty principle is.
Well, exactly. They don't understand the uncertainty principle, what a neutron is. Let me just say this. It's divine retribution of the particles that the physicists use to detonate weapons of mass destruction is their own nemesis. It's this particle that's going to like boomerang back and destroy everything they believe in, all their theories for particles, waves, everything goes up in one great big explosion. And the point is, the arguments, I've written them up in a way that people can understand, but you do need to read the arguments. You need to actually apply yourself. And I mean, my beloved Susie's 81 and she's a poet, but she's really working on understanding these essays, and she's really enjoying the process of helping me edit because she's understanding. So if Susie can understand it, then there's no excuse. Everybody can understand it. Do you see what I mean? Because it's like, that's why it's so powerful working with her, because if every little sentence, she's so meticulous, and she won't let me get by a single sentence or paragraph unless she's understood it, and I have to rework it until she understands it.
It makes sense, because when you've got so much knowledge, it's really hard to kind of bring it down a whole bunch of notches so that, people like myself who haven't read books on quantum physics, or a little bit I have, but, and everybody can understand it. So hold on, before I really dive into getting to really understand this principle that you're talking about, and why everything's going to explode and boomerang back, and how we've been, disinformation and things that have not been true. Why would this benefit people? What's the benefit of understanding what we're about to get into right now? Why would people bother? What relevance does it have?
Science out there as it stands at the moment is very arrogant. And it's telling everyone, when people go to universities, basically they're taken away from God. They're directed away. They're told, no, there's no life after death. It's the snuff it hypothesis. When there's huge amount of evidence for near-death experiences, there's enormous amount of evidence for spiritual dimensions. It's not that we want religion, it's we want the spirituality without religion. And science is not in opposition to spirituality. This is the point. And the vortex theory underpins spirituality. What I've done is I've been able to show how the vortex theory can help us understand these dimensions that we go to after we move on from this planet, dimensions beyond the speed of light. And I can use this vortex theory not only to explain, nuclear energy and matter, antimatter, and all this sort of stuff in physics. I can explain near-death experiences. I can tell you how Sai Baba did his miracles. I can tell you how you have two bodies. When people pass over, they're in a body looking down at their body, which is like a wax model, and they get confused. It's the two-body dilemma, and all this, reincarnation fits into this. And angels, fairies. What I say is there's more reason to believe in angels and fairies than in quarks and the virtual particles of quantum mechanics, you see. So, quark theory is another great big con. There are no quarks. They're blinding us with science. They're just, it's crazy what's going on in physics. So, everyone wants science. Well, they've got to have a true science. And I'm presenting this unified field theory. It's in line with Einstein. It's vindicating him. It's showing he was on the right track. And he was missing this model. He was so close, but he didn't have a clear understanding of precisely how energy forms mass. He had the mathematics of E equals mc squared, but he didn't have the fundamental understanding, you see, which is what I'm bringing in. I don't deal with maths, I just deal with fundamental understandings.
So that makes sense. So what you're saying is, if I can just recap really quickly, and correct me if I misunderstood this, but what you're saying is, based on quark theories, based on quantum mechanics, and all of this other stuff that scientists have produced in recent years, that basically is to separate us and take us away from spirituality,
yes, that's right.
take us away from our true nature and the truth of who we are and where we go and death and life and everything and why we exist and how we exist. Whereas when you come back to Einstein's theory and then you extrapolate on it, as you have done, and dive deeper into some pieces that weren't available to him at that time, and then you've taken and developed that further to show that actually the existence of God and our true nature and who we are really are is also provable in a scientific form.
Absolutely right. You've got it, Tara. You see, the point is, in the universities, they're all promoting materialism of democracies. It goes this old idea that the world is formed of these material particles, and they're saying the quarks are these fundamental particles. You see, the thing is that it's the materialism that's destroying humanity, destroying the planet, and that the vortex blows out materialism. You see, Einstein was anti-materialism. He was pro-God. He was pro the divine. But he wasn't religious, but he a bit like Russell Brand. It's this idea of this underlying principle, this underlying intelligence and consciousness, underlying everything. You see, so and then that's what the physics is showing.
So if everything is consciousness and everything is this unified field, then why would something be rejected from that, such as materialism? Couldn't materialism be included in the field?
Well, what it is materialism is just a theory. It's a wrong idea. The materialism is based on what they call the atomic hypothesis, invented by the Greek philosopher Democritus. And that is that the world is formed of atoms, which can't be split, moving in a void of space. He's got it the wrong way round. Movement doesn't exist as a property of atoms, as a movement in space. No, movement is the primary. The movement is energy. So the movement exists first and sets up the illusion of the material particle and the illusion of space. You see, the vortex isn't a thing. It's just a form. It's just a thought form. It's just an idea. We're actually living in a dream state, as the Aboriginals taught us. So this isn't fundamentally real. It's just we're in this amazing 3D virtual reality. The movement of energy spinning forms the vortex. See, everyone's so caught up in the waveform. The vortex is as primordial as a form of energy. This vortex sets up the illusion of Maya. All right, it's an illusion. It's the illusion. It's just a form of energy. Light is another form of the illusion. It's like we're in a virtual reality. It's like we're in a computer program or something.
Absolutely. To me, it looks like a simulation pod where we're learning to fly ourselves and like drive ourselves and figure out who we are, like, answer those age-old questions. Who am I and why am I here? David, can I just say something to you real quick? So when I was 4, I have a vivid memory as well, being a 4-year-old. And because my mum and dad, and people that know my story and know a little bit about this, I was raised in a very spiritual community, as you're aware. And they were devotees, my parents, and all the grown-ups around me, everybody I knew was a devotee to Guru Maharaji, who's now known as Prem Rawat. And so I was raised in this entire environment, born into it, raised into it. And so my dad was like you, saying exactly what you're saying now. He would say to me when I was 4 years old, everything is an illusion. You don't really exist. Everything is Maya. I remember those words. I remember him telling me, and I'm about this big, this big. And so I used to think, well, if everything's an illusion and I don't really exist, then what's the point of being here? Why am I here? What is the point of me? And because of that, and it made me feel like, well, why would I even bother to exist in a body? And it actually had a bit of a detrimental effect on me, because that didn't feel very loving. I wanted to, because I had a very strong connection to what I will call spirit or source and the light. And I still remember it now as this light, this golden light was just there. And I wanted to be back in the light. I didn't want to be in this body because it didn't make any sense. And I was at 4 years old saying, I just want there to be more love in this world, hence ending up doing what I'm doing now. So it's interesting, isn't it? These early formative experiences that really shape the rest of our lives and what we then go on to pursue. But it did make me feel suicidal for many years. I didn't want to be alive in a human body. I didn't want to be on this earth. I wanted just to go back to source, back to the light, back to the love, and not exist here in this material reality. So how do you explain that? Like, what's the...
Well, first of all, I was a follower of Miraji as well, so I have that in common with your dad. But what it is that the whole of the universe is just based on energy, and energy is more of a thought than a thing. So just understanding the quantum nature of reality. It doesn't mean the reality is meaningless, because it wouldn't be here if it was meaningless. In other words, you and I, Tara, are embodiments of the consciousness, what it is inside us that is the love and the intention and the ability to think and the creative ability and all that. That is the source. Those are attributes of the source consciousness within us. We have created this reality, not somebody else. You and I collectively, with all the other humans, we've created this world. Whatever it is that's in us, that's animating us, has created the whole universe, because it animates everything else. And it's created it so that there can be love. If you're just one and there's nothing else, you've got the potential to love, but you can't love, because to love requires another. You have to have something to love so you can experience love. The love is an outpouring, you see. So the thing is, the whole universe is being created to sort of realize that potential of love.
So it's like love looking to realize itself through manifesting
Absolutely.
human
And that's
body.
what it's all about.
So
and we're here to learn to love. That's why, all the stuff that's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, and all the stuff that's going on in Israel, we're having to learn a very important lesson, that war is unacceptable. We've got to stop being anti-love. We've got to stop being nasty to each other. We've got to learn to love one another. If the Israelis right at the beginning had actually loved the Philistines, because it's the Israelites against the Philistines.
Love thy neighbor.
Love thy neighbor, exactly.
Their own
then
medicine,
they said, well, these Palestinians, they need their own territory, they need their own land. So they wouldn't be settling 700,000 Israelis settling on the West Bank. You see what I mean? That's a lack of love. That's not considering their need. And so they set up this powder cake by the lack of love.
I agree.
That's what it is.
I agree. And it's incredibly sad and it's incredibly traumatic, because that lack of love goes so against our nature and who we are, and it causes such distress in our systems. And then it ignites all kinds of fears and anxieties and judgments, and then it affects our mental health. And basically that lack of love destabilizes all of who we are, and it makes all of our particles and atoms and molecules and everything vibrate out of that frequency of love. It's like a little atom bomb of destruction going off inside of us, which disrupts everything in our internal reality, and then that just ripples out and blows up our life around us, doesn't it, David? So these people that are creating this, creating these wars, they're like little atom bombs just blowing up, because they don't love themselves enough, or love life and love that preciousness, truly understand who they are and what we are as, all one in this love consciousness and unified field. And so they're actually blowing up other people, and therefore blowing up, because they themselves are in that destruction mode. And it's it's heartbreaking.
Well, the thing is, the big problem is weapons. You see Netanyahu and Putin and that, they can only do what they're doing because they are heads of state and they've got arsenals of weapons that they can use. If there were no weapons, they'd just be standing there with sticks and stones. So the thing is that it's the creation of weapons. It's the fact that we're all complicit in our societies, in the arms industry, in creating weapons of destruction. So, this is the karma we're playing out. And as a species, we're having to learn. We're actually God learning some very important lessons that God needs to learn. The whole idea that God knows everything, God is perfect. We're striving for perfection, but we're in the imperfect zone where God is learning lessons that need to be learned in the evolution of divinity.
Right.
And this is why it's so important. Your impetus, the emphasis on love is so important, Tara, because this is what it's all about. We're here to learn how to love. And
Exactly.
the thing is, what I understand is the source spirit, which is at the level of the black hole formation at the center of our galaxy, the great central sun, has decided that it's going to use the yin yang principle. Humanity is going to have to experience more war until we're so sickened and satiated by it that we decide it's unacceptable behavior. So it's almost as though people like Putin and Hitler and Stalin and Netanyahu and all these people are there, especially with the media, for us to learn that war is unacceptable. And we have to come to a point where we say no. Collectively.
I agree. I feel like people like that are instigating these wars actually represent the parts of our global, like say that it's the collective consciousness, and we take it on a very personal. Let's say the collective consciousness of everybody and all that is actually one body of ourselves, because
That's
it's
right.
the same thing. And so I think these people represent the unloved, shunned, neglected, wounded parts of ourselves that we are not tending to. And therefore they show up externally, because as within, so without. And I also feel like the whole, as love creates itself duplicates itself in this quantum universe in order to experience itself and have that relationship of love, everything in this dimension that we exist in seems to work on the principle that in order to understand who we actually are, we first have to understand what we're not. It's like we have to go to those parts of us that are ignorant, that don't yet know that we're love, and feel the wounding, feel the lack, feel the depravity, feel the loss, feel the darkness, feel the pain, feel the suffering, feel all of it, until we can no longer stand it, and we actually come back, because it's the only thing we've got left, because we'll try everything else except this, and then eventually we'll say, okay, what if I can love this part of myself? What if I can love the abhorrent? What if I can love the most unlovable and just love it, and then by doing so actually bring everything back into the frequency and the harmony that it's meant to be in? And it's only love that's going to do that. Fighting it
so true.
Fighting it makes it worse.
It's so true what you're saying. It's no good us hating Netanyahu and Putin and people like that. What we have to do is recognize they're another myself. That's an aspect of my being. That's and the thing is that they're there just expressing something that's in all of us, and we just have to understand what's going on, understand the process, that they're just agents of the divine as well. They're just teaching us lessons that we need to learn.
Right. I think people get a bit annoyed with me actually and don't understand this, because they're like, how can you support that person and this person? It's like, I'm not supporting them. I'm just not hating on them, because I see the good in them. And it doesn't mean that they're not doing, they're doing awful things, or, horrible things. Obviously, there should be no wars. I don't want the poor people of Palestine, the way that they're suffering, all the people that are suffering. That's not a good thing. I don't support that. And it's not, I'm saying that the people that are, creating these wars and perpetuating these wars are good people. No, they're behaving in the wrong way. But hating on them fuels the darkness. I'm not going to add my hatred. I'm not going to fight them. I'm not going to slander them. I'm going to judge them, because I'm judging myself. And it's like, actually, I know through so much experience in my personal life and with working with loads of other people, that when you love the most unlovable thing and you love it anyway, that's the true nature of love. You love everything. Love doesn't separate and say you're not lovable, but you are. That's not love. That just isn't love. That's preference. That's judgment. Love loves everything. So just wanted to get that out there. David, thank you for that. I had a bit of a rant. David, I want to bring you back to this, the quantum mechanics. Could you please, because I think this is fascinating, right? What all your books are and your essays are all about, so that we can understand ourselves. And if we're going on I would say the popular versions of physics and of quarks and of all of them quantum mechanics, then we're going to misunderstand who we are and kind of be off track. We're going to be in that misinformation, just like with so many other things right now. So what is it? Tell us about the quantum mechanics so that we can understand, and then tell us about how your vortex theory and your work around that actually disproves it. But let's start with what is quantum mechanics?
Well, quantum mechanics is a system based upon the idea of Heisenberg that the more certain you are of the position of a particle, the less certain you are of its velocity. So the thing is that, and they build their quantum theory upon that uncertainty principle. Now, the thing about a neutron is all the evidence in physics says that the neutron is an electron that's got locked onto a proton because they're oppositely charged particles. They attract each other, you see. And the thing is that when you study a neutron, the neutron has the mass of an electron and a proton. It can be formed from an electron and a proton, and it falls apart into an electron and a proton. And there's a load of other evidence that I list that supports that idea that that's what a neutron is. But the problem is that for Heisenberg, is if you know where the neutron is where the electron is in this neutron, you're certain of its position, which predicts that it could be moving at velocities anywhere between 0 and 99.97% of the velocity of light. So, and if it had that range of velocities, what physics shows is that when a particle is moving really fast, it gets more massive. And therefore, if Heisenberg were right, you would expect neutrons to have a range of masses, which you can measure, between the mass of one electron and one proton and 40 electrons and 40 protons, because when an electron is moving at nearly the speed of light, it weighs 40 times as much as an electron at rest. And the point is that when you measure the mass of a neutron, all neutrons have exactly the same mass. There's no range in their masses, and it can be measured to several decimal places. So the neutron, if it's an electron bound to a proton, disproves the uncertainty principle. So when the neutron was discovered in 1932, everyone was happy about it being a bound state, except Heisenberg. He stood up and said, no, it can't be that. It has to be a completely different particle. And the scientists have developed quark theory to actually back Heisenberg. The whole idea is
quark theory.
What?
What is quark theory then?
Well, quark theory is the theory that basically a proton is made of 2 up quarks and 1 down quark, and the neutron is made of 2 down quarks and 1 up quark. And what happens is the weak nuclear force changes the quark status you see around. So when an electron comes into a proton, this weak nuclear force comes into play, and an up quark turns into a down quark. And these quarks are supposed to have fractional charge, which you don't observe in nature. It's a baloney theory that's all just been cobbled together to try to explain that the neutron is not 2 charged particles just coexisting. It's like alchemy, they say. The electron and proton cease to be, and a completely new particle appears. And they've got this crazy quark theory to quark it about. The word quark means nonsense in German. It's nonsense theory. So again, people need to read my essays, because in my essays, I disprove quark theory. I show the evidence. Quark theory is nonsense.
So an up quark and a down quark is but what is an actual quark?
I know it does. It's so difficult, because I'll tell you a story. This is the story. Once upon a time, there was a mad professor of puddings. And anyway, in his department of nutrition, a student baked plums into a pudding and baked plum pudding. And they were so excited, they were shouting, "Eureka, Eureka, I've just baked plum pudding." And the mad professor got very angry with his student and said, "Have you learned nothing of what I've taught you? When you bake plums in a pudding, due to the action of weak cooking force, the plums are transformed into cherries and you end up with a Black Forest ghetto. but the student said, when I shook the pudding, a plum fell out. How do you explain that? Oh, said the professor. He said, when you have this Black Forest gatto, it's unstable, and what happens? Cherries fall out of it and revert back to plums. You see. Now, this is completely nonsense. But the student couldn't argue with the man because he was none other than the president of the Royal Society of Puddings. And if this student wanted to make it in a good career in the cake and pudding industry, he had to believe what this chap said. That's the state of physics, Tara. And people want science.
Mm-hmm. And basically, in recent years, we can see that science can neither prove or disprove anything it likes, depending on
exactly. They're blinding us with
science. The plums
science.
and the Black Forest gattos, it can come up with X, Y, gobbledygook.
Absolutely, it's all gobbledygook.
Believe it because it's science, because somebody wrote it in a journal, and it must be true.
That's right. That's right. People just believe. They put more by credentials, the PhD, than they do by the science. By people don't listen to me because I haven't got a PhD. I deliberately chose not to.
Why was that then? Because you didn't want to.
Because I knew they would program me. I knew I couldn't get the exams. I couldn't get anywhere unless I allowed my young brain to be programmed with their ideas. And I had to have a clear canvas so that I could work on this vortex idea. So I had to do my own reading and my own study, and had to teach myself so that I wasn't letting people influence me.
Did Einstein have a degree?
He did in the end, but in 1905, when he put forward the 4 most important papers ever, he didn't have a PhD. He didn't have the proper degree. He was just
he didn't have a certificate. I thought so.
Yeah. Yeah. So the point is that, you see, it's because he wasn't influenced by, the mainstream. He was free. His mind was free to do this most amazing.
And it really is. It's that having the space in that space environment in which we exist, having the literal space to be able to imagine and allow all of these little particles of our genius to come together and form things, and actually be present enough to observe it and connect to it and articulate it as you have. So in what way? So you talked about this theory, this quark theory, this quantum mechanics theory coming back and hitting them in the face like a boomerang and kind of destroying things. Did you mean that physically is going to happen? I mean, obviously not a boomerang hitting them in the face, but the fact that because their theories really, according to your research, don't actually go anywhere, that eventually that kind of all gets exposed and blows up in their face.
It is exposed. You see, that the history and philosophy of science, the most important rule in science is that if evidence comes up to disprove your theory, you have to ditch the theory. You have to. Otherwise, it's not science. The whole of science is lost. So what they've done is, to protect Heisenberg's precious little bottom, what they've done is they've discredited the evidence about this neutron, to protect the uncertainty principle of Werner Heisenberg, to protect his quantum mechanics. So the thing is this, that they've broken the cardinal rule in science, you see, by denying the evidence to protect the theory. With the vortex theory, it was dropped because it couldn't explain these spectral lines. And the thing is that with the subatomic vortex, I've just explained to you in the subatomic sex that the spectral lines are created by the quantum leap, and I've explained the lover analogy and all that. It's when you apply the vortex theory at the right level, it explains all these things in quantum theory, in quantum mechanics, but not in the way Heisenberg did.
So have you presented your research, your material to them, and have they disproved your work?
They won't listen. I've presented this work. I gave a lecture in Malaysia, and every professor of physics and chemistry from the whole country was at my talk. And I did this lecture on how I disproved the uncertainty principle. There was silence in the question time. One professor of chemistry said, "Is what we're teaching the students about the atomic orbits, still true?" And I said, "Yes, I'm just challenging the subatomic level." And there was a visible sigh of relief, and she sat down. Afterwards, about 80 postgrad students came up to me and they said, Mr. Ash, if what you said in that lecture is right, everything we're being taught in this physics department is wrong.
And what did you say to them?
I said, yeah, I said, it's pretty shattering. And the point, the last person to read my work and complete was the professor of nuclear physics at Oxford University. And she found one fault, and I corrected it.
Teamwork makes the dream work. But
yeah.
So has anybody else is there anybody else whose work you would say is in line with yours, that has the same theory, that uses the same model, that's come up with the same?
No, there are people trying to apply the vortex model to quarks and all sorts of things like that. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just the lone voice crying in the wilderness. My archetype is John the Baptist, you see.
I see. So I suppose for those people holding up the quark theory, and then you bring along the vortex theory, and if the vortex theory doesn't support the quark theory, then it's like, well, your thing doesn't fit, so chuck it away. And
yeah,
rather than the other way around, as if, well, the quark theory doesn't fit the vortex theory, so chuck the quark theory away. It's like working because that one's got the most traction, that one's got the most belief, that's most invested in. It's like
that's right. You see, the whole world of physics is back in quantum mechanics and quark theory. And it's anti-God and it's anti-angels and fairies.
Right.
And I can use my physics to explain the existence of angels and fairies. So I really mean it. There's more reason to believe in angels and fairies than quarks and the virtual particles of quantum mechanics.
Would we understand it? Because I mean, I'm big into angels. I see the angelic in people and I connect to the angelic, and I feel like for a lot of us, that's who we really are. We just don't. It's an unrealized aspect of ourselves. Would it take a lot of heavy physics for you to explain?
No, it's very, very, very simple. Basically, the thing is that if energy in the vortex, which is moving at the speed of light, can create a world out of vortex and waves based on the speed of light, is it possible to create a world in which you have energy at twice the speed of light setting up vortices and waves? And in my physics, I show that is possible, you see. And so it's what I actually show is that the universe is formed like these nested, rather like nested Russian dolls, or I use these little baskets. And the thing is, this inner basket is the world we live in, the 3D world, based on the speed of light. This next level out, this next basket, is based on twice the speed of light, which is the hyperphysical world. That's the fourth dimension, and then the astral level, and then the next level out is actually 16 times the speed of light, and that is the spiritual level. And that's where the energy in the vortices and waves are moving at 16 times the speed of light. So the thing is that you notice that this little basket is part of it's contained by this one, which is contained by that one, because 0 to the speed of light is contained by that one. 0 to the speed, twice the speed of light is contained in that one. 0 to 3 times the speed of light is contained in that one, which means that our world is part of the hyperphysical, and the hyperphysical is part of the superphysical. This is the world of matter. This is the world, the physical world. This one is the world. This is the world of the body of matter. This is the world of soul. This is the world of spirit. But the thing is, matter exists in all these worlds, but at different, not frequency speeds, but intrinsic speeds of energy, different Einstein constants. Now, the thing is, that means that there could be beings all around us, because our world is part of their world. There could be beings all around us that are moving through our space-time. They can see us, but we can't see them, you see, because we're in their space-time, but they are their space-time is beyond our perception. So they can see us, but we can't see them because the speed of their movement is too fast for us to perceive. The ancient law says angels are all around us because we can't see them because they're moving too fast. Notice they talked about movement, not frequency. Then the thing is, they said that there are fairies at the bottom of the garden and we can't see them because we're too slow and clumsy. Again, it's a factor of speed. The separation between us and the fairies is speed. If I could accelerate the speed of the energy in every subatomic particle of my body to twice the speed of light, I would vanish out of this physical world and appear in the hyperphysical world. If I could do that 16 times the speed of light, I would come into this fifth dimensional spiritual superphysical world. All right. Now, look, in my book, I explain the technology of ascension. That is ascension, accelerating the speed of energy in the matter. This is how Sai Baba made things appear and disappear. What Jesus was doing when he fed the 5,000 is he was condensing super energy. That's what I call it, the energy beyond the speed of light. He had an operator in the hyperphysical condensing super energy through the atomic template of the loaves and fishes, duplicating them. In other words, I can explain the loaves and the fishes. I can explain Sai Baba. What he did is his hyperphysical operator had this beam. It's like beam me up, Scotty. You have a beam of super energy, and you switch the beam on, and any body of physical energy in the beam just resonates to the speed of energy in the beam and just disappears out of space-time and appears in the world of the beam. So this beam was switched on to a watch or a piece of jewelry in the Sai stores in Sai Baba's ashram, and the resonance caused the watch or the bit of jewelry to evaporate out of space-time, and it was held in the beam. Meanwhile, he has his hand up, and his super energy hyperphysical resonance operator then switches the beam off, and it just plops back into his hand. I explain all this with my cosmic laws of motion. I've got laws of physics, you see, which explain the resonance technology, you see. But the trouble is, when we call these operators super energy resonance technology operators, it's a hell of a mouthful. Much easier just to call them genies.
Genies. It's going
Genie
to say.
means spirit. See the point? Aladdin had a genie. Jesus had a genie. People be shocked when I say that Sai Baba had a genie. They're simply angels that are helping us with this technology. And it's all part of the vortex physics, you see. Ascension, life after death, reincarnation, miracles, all can be explained with this vortex physics. All in the book.
So people can read that book and get
the answer. They can read that book, yeah.
Because I can imagine people are getting really excited right now, and all their particles are moving much faster because they're getting excited and wanting to get hold of that book and read
that book's on Amazon. Just go on to Amazon and order it. Yeah.
So show us again what's it called so everyone can make super clear. I'll put it up on the video here. Super energy and the, what does it say? And the quantum
super energy in the quantum vortex. And it's got the lotus on it. That's my brand, is the lotus. Your dad would love that, wouldn't he, Tara?
I think loads of people would love that. I love that. My dad would love, everybody would love that. What's not to love? That's absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. So when people read your book, and because of, I'm assuming maybe Susie's helped you so that she can make sure that everybody else can understand what you're talking about, and we can read your book and understand it, and understand how all of these miracles and angels and everything are possible. But it's also like a guidebook for people so that they can actually apply this to themselves and change the speed of their particles and ascend.
Well, yes, the technology is explained in there, but you know, you have to understand this technology is a spiritual technology that's operated from the spiritual realm. So we're not in control of that process. We have to wait until the process is operated on us at the right time. You see, so our job is just to prepare ourselves for ascension, and when the time is right, we'll be called.
I was going to say that. How do you get
Christians believe in that as the rapture?
So how do we best prepare then?
Well, I teach people what I call the open way, which is I teach people a Tai technique, a Tai Chi technique, which is just to lift the tongue a couple of centimeters and just to taste the edge around the tongue, just to feel the chi, and then go into the breath, and you get this. It just holds the space and helps you just go into meditation, and which is a good way to learn to center ourselves. But Tara, the only way to prepare for ascension is to love. That's why your work is so important.
I agree. I agree. I agree.
It's Jesus said the all that's required for us for ascension is to love whoever we are with, and that can be challenging. You have to love our neighbors, and we have to love the person we're in relationship with.
Well, that also includes ourselves. I'm with me all the time,
And
24.
we have to love ourselves. Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I used to not love myself at all, had no care for myself, was incredibly self-destructive, and that wasn't good for anybody. So yeah, learning to love, I think it's the scariest thing for people because it does mean, loving other people. I guess a lot of people say they find it easy, but do they really? And what kind of love are we giving those other people? Because until you start giving it to yourself, the way that you love others, and then you apply that to yourself, you'll soon see that the way that you love others needs to actually shift a little bit.
But
Because
Tara, sorry to interrupt.
no,
That's
it's fine.
so important what you've just said, that you went through this phase of self-destruction and hating yourself and stuff like that, and then you came through that into this phase of unconditionally loving yourself. Now, the thing is, you're just one step ahead of humanity. Humanity's still in the, with Netanyahu and Putin and all that stuff going on, still in the phase of destruction, of self-hate, of not loving themselves. So if you can get through it, Tara, then the whole of humanity can get through it. So you're
Exactly.
just paving the way. And it's almost as though you were meant to go through the journey of self-destruction and not love to find love. And that's why we've got wars. That's why everything is so full of hatred and darkness and that in this world, is because we've got to go through non-love to appreciate and value love.
We do. We come from love. We get born into a seemingly separate state away from
Yeah.
love. And
Yeah.
we go through the mill of human conditioned,
Yeah.
crazy stuff that's called love, but really isn't love at all. And that's why it's so confusing. And that's why it damages our minds and our hearts and breaks us, because it's called love, but it isn't love. And we know what love is because we came from love. So we come from love, we go through not love, only to discover really what the truth of love is, so we can come back to the beginning and complete the cycle and realize ourselves. And that, I feel, is the entire journey of being a human being, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And people want to know, with your baskets, David, I love that model that you can use because it's so easy to see. With the Russian dolls, you know, but you can't see it with your eyes. When you hold up those baskets with the three inside each other, my experience is, and this is very real, very tangible, very practical, that when I love the third dimensional me, all that is me. And then when I love the astral me, the me that thinks I'm superior or inferior, or it has all these funny ideas and all these thoughts and all these judgments, that infinite, mind space. And I actually love retrieve myself from there and love that. Then my third dimensional self and my fifth dimensional self, or my angelic state, because it is golden, that layer, it's like a layer of the energy field. It's there around people all the time. But like you say, it's moving so fast, we can't see it. It's invisible. And they say it doesn't exist because you can't see it. But if you have the eyes to see, you can see it and realize that that is actually a body of you. It's a layer of you to claim. And by loving yourself in the middle, and you change that energetic state, then you are matching this state, the fifth dimensional state, the love frequency, and therefore you are a conduit. There is no separation between angelic you and human you. It's like you own your whole body, if you like. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. Absolutely does. And in this book, I say that we are, the earth is the womb of angels. I explain that basically we're baby angels, or we're angels that have come here to be upgraded. So it's almost as though we need the experience. We need all the experiences of grief and pain and fear and war. We need these experiences, part of our angelic evolution, so that we know it. We have to know the antithesis of love. We have to know the opposite of love, because otherwise we can't really know love. So that's what the journey of reincarnation is all about. We're on our way. We don't become an angel, and we don't enjoy the angelic realms just after a single life. It's after thousands of lives, thousands of incarnations, thousands of experiences, until we're so hammered and shaped we become like diamonds. And then it's through the ascension that we ascend into the fifth dimension, the dimension of the angels. But the destiny for humanity is to become seraphim, which is the highest level of in the angelic realms. And that set up the dynamic, you know, because like Lucifer was a cherub, which is a next level down. And there's incredible jealousy that why should we humans be sort of leapfrogging over the cherubim to become seraphim? Why should we be closer to the source? And the answer to Lucifer is, well, you've got to become a human being. You've got to let go of your pride and fall down and be that miserable little worm of a human groveling around with the pigs in the mud. You know what I mean? We have to go through that whole process of evolution coming from those primitive states coming into the civilized state we've got now, and go through everything, all the trauma and everything is essential in that process of becoming angels, creator gods. Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable. And it's like, well, like you said, love can't realize itself until it's something other, until it's created the other. So it's like, you know, that love of the mother, the divine feminine creating her children. We were born of this earth, born from that ultimate mother love. And one day we return back to the mother, we return back to the mud. And so we come from mud and we return to mud.
I love it. I love it.
And it's like, and what's not to love in between? It's like, that's an experience. And unless we were in these physically dense bodies where everything's moving so slowly that we can actually touch and sense and kiss and, you know, feel and have these incredible experiences, then we get to know love on the densest possible level. We get to know the light of ourselves, that super consciousness, our source, and we get to know the material, the matter, the mother. It's like the divine union of the light and the matter is us, and we get to experience that because we're both. And it's just, I think it's just the most beautiful setup ever. And it's like love is everywhere, actually, as I'm sure you realize when you start seeing everything in the quantum field, David, and you're just like seeing little, you know, subatomic love explosions everywhere.
Love it. I love it. I love it.
The subatomic love explosion. What a name. That could be another book or a dating night.
Yeah.
David,
yeah, ultimately love is what brings everything into being and holds everything into being. And that love is coming from the mother. We're in the womb, you know, and the mother loves us.
Still in the womb. We are. I very much see that for humanity. We're still in the womb. We haven't yet actually been born.
That's it. Yeah, we're still in the womb.
We are. In this sense of separation, can't see our true face of our mother, can't see the true face of our father. We're just in this little kind of quarantine zone of separation in a bubble.
That's so true.
Not knowing what's outside of the bubble. We're just in that little 3D bubble of the womb. And yeah, it is about being born into our true selves. What it looks like on the outside of this third dimension is very different to what it feels like and experiences like on the inside. But what does it take, David, for people to actually make that transition? Because some people might be like, well, I'll just stay in my little mud body in my 3D and I'll stay in my womb and my separation state, and I'll stay with the quark theory, and I'll stay with, you know, the science that proves that God doesn't exist. And what do you think it takes to actually, you know, create that movement, to create that shift?
Well,
in that?
I think, you know, people have choice. This is the freedom of choice. And there are people who are going to stay with that, especially the academics, the highly educated people. They're not going to change. Max Planck said that science progresses from funeral to funerals. He said you can't convert people. You have to wait till they die, and a new generation comes up that's familiar with this. So really, it's a lifetime of people, you know, being open to new ideas, open-minded, open-hearted, and it's like we have to be like the babies in the womb. We can hear the voices. You know, you can hear the sound of mummy and daddy out of the womb, but you're not aware of them. And so the sensitivity that you have now, Tara, and so many other women have as well, but are people who are sensitive to the spiritual worlds. You can almost hear it. You know they're there. You're aware of their presence. And it's just being open to that. People just need to be more subtle and you know, loving. It's not so much what people believe, it's how they behave toward one another. And I think that's what the universe is really looking for. It's people who are selfish and self-centered really doesn't matter what they believe. They can be religious, but if they're selfish, they cut themselves off. So, what David Wilcock has been taught about the ascension is that in order to ascend, you have to be just over 50% more in service to others than in service to yourself.
Right. That's lovely. I mean, in a way, I suppose these statements kind of get confusing, especially when I'm talking about self-love and then the selfishness and the service to self and service to others. So the person who is selfish, and people would say, oh, well, he only loves himself. He doesn't love others. He only serves himself and loves himself, and therefore he's not serving and loving others. That's selfish. And that's ultimately where and for me, I think that's also disinformation, because actually that person who's behaving in that selfish way, in isolation, in separation, that isn't love.
No,
I think it's
no, of
been
course not.
mislabeled. That's been called love. But actually, if you really look at it, the people that behave like that don't love at all. They don't love themselves, and they certainly don't love others. They don't feel loved. They don't really know what love is. And that's why that behavior and that self-serving thing gets set up. It's like a negative. How would you explain that in physics, where something just kind of eats itself up? It becomes so negative, it goes into like an antimatter kind of dark
Well, that's
energy.
called entropy. It just things go to a greater state of disorder. It's the opposite to work. I really think everyone has to take responsibility for themselves, and I agree. This whole thing of loving oneself it's not about accumulating wealth or trying to be in positions of power, or having so you're controlling or dominating other people or stuff like that. It's much more. It's just being open-hearted and when you love other people, when you are in love, then you find that fills your heart with love, and then one loves oneself when one is in love with life, when one is in love, just living in that harmonious state. And it takes a lot of knocks of the ego. I've realized one of the greatest dangers for humanity is education, especially higher education, because people get programmed and they get hardened and they get specialized, and they begin to you get higher and higher qualifications, and they feel they're superior to others. It's like a priesthood, and there are great dangers in these establishments. And that's why so many of us find we have to struggle a bit in life. It keep that humility and that close to the earth and close to other people, and we need to learn lessons of compassion, which is so important.
I couldn't agree more. That humility is everything. That you can't be open to love if you're not humble. Like you really have to have a humble heart for your heart to be open, and that pursuit of status and kind of egoic validation.
Yeah.
It's like quark theory. It's barking up the wrong tree, isn't it, David? It's taking
that's right. That's it. Yeah.
In a way, you're absolutely fascinating. I love you so much. Thank you for sharing. I mean, I'm sure you could keep talking for days. Is there any final nugget of wisdom or any final truth that you want to say to anybody, any message to our lovely viewers out there and listeners?
Well, yes, love God and love your neighbor. Loving God is loving yourself. It's loving the self within one. It's appreciating that part of you that's conscious and aware, that part beyond the physical, that source. That is God. That is where we can only love God with all our heart and all our mind by going inside and finding the kingdom of heaven within. This is where the teaching of Maharaji is so important. He's saying we need the knowledge so that we can go within and find the source within, because that's the source of love. So we go within to find the source of love, and then it pours out of us, and we just become full of love. And that's what loving yourself is, allowing yourself to be full of love. But it's like you have to go into the well and draw the water up, which is why taking time to meditate, like the open way that I showed, going into the breath. The breath is like working the pump. The handle of the pump is the tongue, which you just put up a bit, and then you go down and draw the well of love, love out of the well of love under the breath, and you just pull it up and let it pour out of you.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So I'm going to leave some links below for everybody who wants to come and find you on your Facebook group, and any other modes of contact that we decide to leave down there for David, so that all of you lovely souls can go and find him. Get that book. I mean, that's got to be a must read for 2024. And whichever time you're listening or watching this podcast, actually just go and get that, and to come and discover the open way and everything. And then we can put the spiritual and the science together, the heart and the mind together, the masculine element, the feminine element, all together, and we get unity, and all the pieces can click together. And that's what we want in this world, isn't it? Much more unity, more peace, more love. And thank you, David, for your many, many years of work and research and practice and, you know, testing and all the things that you've done. And a lot of it I know goes unseen. So I just want to really thank you and give you some love and appreciation for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tara, so much for inviting me on.